The Aurora spire stood tall in the darkness of space. A giant research station orbiting a dead star, it was home to hundreds of scientists, engineers, and soldiers. Its shining halls were full of noise during the day, machines humming, people shouting, data streams running across glowing walls. But at night, it became quiet. Almost too quiet. In the silence of midnight, a man pushed a mop down one of the long, empty corridors. His name was Elliot. He wore a plain gray janitor's uniform, with a faded name tag and a tired face. His steps were slow, careful. He didn't look up when the lights flickered or when strange sounds came from the vents. He just kept working. People hardly noticed him during the day. At night, no one cared where he was. And that's exactly how he liked it. Tonight, however, something felt wrong. Elliot paused at the end of the hall, leaning on his mop. He glanced at one of the cameras in the corner. Its red light blinked 3 times, then stopped. A strange shadow moved across the lens for a split second before disappearing. Elliot watched it quietly. "It begins," he murmured under his breath. His voice was low, but his words hung in the air like a secret. Just then, a young soldier ran past him, panting and wide-eyed. "Containment breach." The soldier shouted into his com. "Section 7 has been breached. We need reinforcements now." Sirens screamed through the station. Red lights flashed. The floor trembled as soldiers and security droids rushed through the corridors. Doors slammed shut all around, sealing people in or out. But Elliot kept moving at his own pace. Mop, step, mop, step. His eyes, calm and sharp, followed the chaos. 2 scientists stumbled past him, clutching tablets. One of them nearly bumped into him and snapped, "Get out of the way, janitor. This is an emergency." Elliot gave a small nod and stepped aside. He watched them disappear around the corner before turning to face the now dark hallway behind him. The shadows at the far end, something crawled out. It wasn't human. Its body was long and twisted, black skin glistening like oil, with claws that scraped against the metal floor. Its mouth opened in a silent snarl, revealing too many teeth. It stopped when it saw Elliot standing there. He didn't move, didn't flinch. Then he spoke. "I was wondering when you'd come." The creature hissed and charged. In an instant, Elliot dropped the mop. His hand shot out and caught the creature by its throat. With one sharp twist, he slammed it into the wall so hard that the metal dented. The creature writhed, screeched, and fell silent. Elliot let it drop to the floor. Behind him, a soldier had stopped mid-run, staring in disbelief. What did you just do?" The soldier stammered, lowering his rifle. Elliot glanced over his shoulder, his voice calm. "Cleaning up. You killed it with your bare hands." "Yes," Elliot replied simply, picking up his mop again. "You'd better go. More are coming." The soldier didn't move. His eyes were fixed on Elliot, trying to understand what he'd just seen. But Elliot ignored him and continued down the hallway, pushing his mop like nothing had happened. As he walked deeper into the station, Elliot began to notice more signs of destruction: claw marks on the walls, bodies of soldiers scattered across the floor, entire doors ripped from their hinges. He passed another camera. It blinked twice, then stayed dark. Elliot stopped and placed his hand on a small panel hidden behind a loose piece of wall. The panel slid open, revealing a keypad. He typed a code quickly, and a secret door opened. Inside was a narrow staircase that led down into the hidden lower levels of the station, places no ordinary staff ever saw. The air here was colder. The lights were dimmer. The silence was heavier. He moved fast now, his calm steps replaced by purpose. At the bottom of the stairs was a massive steel door marked with faded red letters: Project Nemesis, Restricted. Elliot put his palm against the scanner. It glowed blue and hissed as the door unlocked. He stepped inside. The room beyond was filled with glass chambers, each holding something horrifying, more creatures like the one he'd killed. But these were bigger, meaner, and very much awake. Their glowing eyes followed him as he walked past. At the center of the room was a console, and behind it, a holographic figure of an old man appeared. The figure spoke. "Final protocol activated," it said. "Welcome back, Elliot." Elliot stood still for a moment before answering. "It's been a long time." The hologram's expression was grim. "The Nemesis project has breached containment." "You know what that means." "I know. You understand your mission?" "Yes." "Then proceed." The hologram vanished. The room lit up as hidden compartments opened in the walls. One by one, weapons and armor unfolded around Elliot blades. Rifles, grenades, a sleek black suit that clung to his body like liquid metal. His janitor's uniform dissolved, replaced by something far more terrifying. When he looked at his reflection in the glass chamber, his eyes now glowed bright blue. He smiled faintly. Time to clean house. Elliot moved quickly through the underground tunnels, hunting the escaped creatures. One by one, he tracked them down, sometimes using weapons, sometimes just his hands. His movements were precise, deadly, silent. Above him, the station shook as the queen of the creatures, the largest and most dangerous, made her way to the control tower. The scientists and soldiers had gathered there, barricading themselves, hoping to survive. But the queen was already tearing through the walls, her massive body coiled like a serpent, her claws slicing steel like paper. When Elliot arrived, the room was chaos. The soldiers were firing wildly, screaming orders. The scientists huddled in corners, praying, and the queen stood in the middle, towering over them all, her body gleaming black and silver, her eyes burning red. She turned slowly when Elliot entered. Her voice, deep and guttural, filled the room. "So, the traitor returns." Elliot said nothing. He stepped forward, unafraid. "You were made to destroy us," the queen hissed. "But you are one of us too, flesh and metal. You do not belong to them." Elliot stared at her coldly. "I belong to my mission." With a roar, the queen lunged at him. The soldiers scattered as the two collided in a blur of motion. Claws clashed against steel. The queen's tail whipped around, smashing consoles and shattering walls. Elliot moved with impossible speed, slashing and striking, each blow driving her back. But she was strong, stronger than anything he had faced before. She slammed him into the ground, her claws tearing through his armor. Sparks flew as she crushed him under her weight. "You cannot win," she growled. "You were designed to die with us." Elliot, coughing, reached into a hidden compartment in his chest and pulled out a small glowing device. "Maybe," he said, "but you're coming with me." He pressed the device. The station's core began to hum, a deep, rising sound that made the walls vibrate. Lights flickered. Alarms screamed. The queen froze, realizing what he had done. "No." "Yes," Elliot whispered. The soldiers and scientists scrambled for the escape pods. Elliot didn't move. He pinned the queen down, locking her in place as the core's energy built to a blinding white light. A voice echoed through the station. "Self-destruct in 10, 9. Elliot tightened his grip on the queen. 8, 7. She struggled, but he held firm. 6, 5. The pods launched away from the station, carrying the survivors to safety. 4, 3. Elliot's eyes met the queen's, cleaning complete. 2, 1. The Aurora spire exploded in silence, a brilliant bloom of fire and light against the dark star. From the rescue ships, the survivors watched in awe and sadness. The station was gone, and so was the strange janitor who had saved them all. They didn't even know his name. Weeks later, on a quiet, empty planet far from any star, a figure lay still on the ground. Slowly, his fingers switched. Then his eyes opened, glowing faintly blue. Elliot sat up, his body battered but alive. He looked at the sky, a faint smile on his lips. "Protocol complete," he whispered. "Until next time." And with that, The forgotten man stood and walked into the shadows, disappearing once again. The survivors of the Aurora Spire huddled in the cold gray halls of the rescue ship Hope's Edge. The ship floated silently in orbit above the remains of the station, its windows glowing faintly against the black void. Pieces of twisted metal and shattered glass still drifted by, silent reminders of the disaster they had just escaped. No one spoke much. They sat in the main cabin, bandaged and exhausted, listening to the occasional crackle of static from the COMM. Every now and then, someone whispered, "The janitor." Before falling quiet again, Captain Rhea Morgan stood at the front of the room, her arms crossed. She was tall, with sharp eyes and a voice that carried authority even in the silence. She finally spoke. "Who saw what happened down there?" "Number." One answered at first, then a young soldier raised his hand. His name tag read Vance. "I did," he said, his voice hoarse. "Speak," Rhea ordered. Vance swallowed hard. It wasn't a man. At least not just a man. He grabbed one of those things and crushed it, bare hands, like it was nothing. Another soldier, sitting on the floor nearby, nodded weakly. "I saw it too. He wasn't even scared. He went down into the lower levels. Didn't even take a weapon." Rhea frowned. "You're saying the janitor defeated creatures that took out half our unit?" "Alone?" "Yes, ma'am," Vance replied. Rhea's lips pressed into a thin line. "And where is he now?" Vance shook his head. "Didn't make it out. He stayed. Behind. Blew the whole station." Rhea stared at the floor for a moment before whispering, "Then why do I feel like it's not over?" Before anyone could answer, the ship shuddered, the lights flickered, the floor hummed, and then silence. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Rhea tapped her cum. "Bridge, report." No response. She tried again. "Bridge. This is Captain Morgan. Report." Nothing. The silence grew heavier. "Stay here," Rhea ordered. She drew her sidearm and headed for the door. Vance stood quickly. "Ma'am, you shouldn't go alone." "Fine, you're with me," she said without looking back. The two of them moved through the dim corridors of the ship. The air felt colder now. The hum of the engines was faint, almost. Wrong. They turned a corner and stopped. The hallway ahead was dark. The emergency lights flickered faintly, casting strange shadows across the walls. And at the far end, the door to the bridge hung open, bent and broken. Vance tightened his grip on his rifle. "This doesn't feel right, ma'am." Rhea nodded. "Stay sharp." They stepped closer. The smell hit them first, metallic and sour, like blood and ozone mixed together. The floor was slick in places. Dark stains stretched across the walls. When they finally reached the bridge, they froze. It was empty. The crew was gone. No bodies, no sign of a fight. Just gone. The screens flickered weakly, showing static and broken data streams. And then something moved. Vance swung his rifle up. "Who's there?" From the shadows behind the captain's chair, a figure stepped forward. For a moment, Rhea thought it was another soldier, but then she saw its eyes, glowing red, and its smile, too wide, too sharp. It spoke in a low, mocking voice. "You thought it was over. You thought he destroyed us. But he only killed the weak." Rhea raised her pistol. "What are you?" The creature chuckled, its form shifting in the faint light. Parts of it seemed human, but its skin rippled like liquid shadow, and claws extended from its fingers. It hissed. "And the hidden enemy. The one even he couldn't find." Vance fired first. His bullets tore through the figure, but it didn't flinch. It stepped closer. "You humans are always so sure of yourselves," it said. "But you don't understand. We're already here. We've always been here." It lunged. Rhea and Vance dove aside as its claws ripped through the floor where they had stood. "Run!" Rhea shouted. They sprinted back into the hallway. The creature's laughter echoing behind them. As they ran, Rhea tapped her come. "All hands, evacuate the ship. This is not a drill." Doors slammed open as soldiers and crew scrambled for escape. Pods, but even as they ran, the ship itself began to groan, the walls bending as if something massive was moving inside them. Vance looked back, just once, and froze. More creatures. Dozens, crawling from the vents, slipping from the shadows, peeling themselves out of the walls. "They're everywhere," he yelled. Rhea grabbed his arm and pulled him forward. "Don't stop." They reached the pod bay just as the first of the creatures caught up. Soldiers fired wildly, trying to hold them back. Rhea shoved Vance toward an open pod. "Go." He stumbled inside and turned back just in time to see her fire one last shot before slamming the hatch shut. The pod launched, rocketing away from the ship. Through the tiny window, Vance watched as the Hope's Edge writhed, its surface cracking, its lights dying. And then silence. No explosion this time. Just silence. Vance sat in the pod, breathing hard, staring at the empty void. And then a faint sound from behind him. He froze. Slowly he turned. There, crouched in the shadows of the tiny escape pod, a pair of red eyes stared back at him. "You can't run," it whispered. Vance reached for his sidearm, but the creature was already on him. Meanwhile, far away on the barren planet where Elliot had awakened, he stood atop a ridge, looking toward the stars. He could feel it, a wrongness in the air. He closed his eyes. "They survived," he muttered. He opened a panel on his wrist. A faint holographic map of the galaxy appeared, marked with dozens of tiny red dots, spreading fast. His jaw tightened. They were hiding, he whispered to himself. From behind him, a voice spoke. "You failed." Elliot turned. It was another figure, tall and cloaked, its face hidden. Elliot didn't flinch. "Not yet," he said. The figure stepped closer. "They've already infected the humans. The war is lost." Elliot's eyes glowed brighter. "Then I'll clean it up." He reached into the ground beside him and pulled out a long, black weapon, one that pulsed faintly with energy. "I'll finish what I started," he said. The figure tilted its head. "Even if it kills you?" Elliot stared back at the stars. "Yes." Then, without another word, he stepped forward and vanished into the night. The escape pod drifted in the dark. Inside, Vance woke with a sharp breath. His head hurt, and the faint red light of the pod made his eyes sting. For a moment, he thought it was a dream, but then he saw the scratches on the walls. Deep, jagged claw marks. He froze. Slowly he reached for his pistol. His hand shook as he checked the corners of the small pod. Nothing moved. No sound, but he could still feel it, the same presence from the ship. Watching him, waiting. "Come on, Vance," he whispered to himself. "It's just you now, just you." He tapped the pod's comm panel. "This is Private Vance, survivor of Hope's Edge. Can anyone hear me? Requesting immediate pickup." "Static." Again he called, his voice growing louder. Nothing. He leaned back against the wall, clutching the pistol tight. His breathing slowed as exhaustion crept over him. Then, a soft laugh. His eyes snapped open. It came from the shadows at the far end of the pod. "I was hoping you'd stay awake," the voice said. Vance aimed his gun. "Show yourself." From the dark, two red eyes appeared, followed by a long, sharp smile. "You humans never learn," the creature hissed. "No matter how far you run." Vance fired. The shot lit up the pod for a moment, but when the light faded, the creature was gone. Only the laugh remained, echoing in his head. On the barren planet, Elliot stood in the ruins of an old facility. The wind howled around him, carrying dust and ash across the cracked ground. He knelt beside a metal door half buried in the sand, brushing it clean with his hand. A faint symbol glowed on the surface, the same one that had been hidden on his uniform all these years. He pressed his palm against it. The ground rumbled, and the door slid open, revealing a staircase that descended into darkness. Elliot didn't hesitate. He descended slowly, the faint blue glow of his eyes lighting the way. At the bottom, a large chamber opened before him. The walls were lined with holographic screens, each showing strange data streams, battle maps, and images of creatures like the ones he had fought. In the center stood a tall glass cylinder. Inside was a body, not human, not fully alien. It looked like him. He stepped closer, studying the figure inside. The same face, the same eyes, but this one was sleeping. Suddenly, a voice filled the chamber, the same voice from the Aurora. Spire's hologram. "Welcome back, Elliot." He didn't flinch. "I want answers," he said. "You already know," the voice replied. "Say it anyway." The hologram of the old man appeared in front of him. "You were part of the final protocol," the voice explained. "Created by humanity during the First War. A hybrid, human flesh and alien technology. Designed to fight them on their own terms." Elliot's jaw tightened. "And the others?" he asked, nodding toward the sleeping figure in the glass. "Failures," the voice said coldly. "You are the only one who survived. The only one strong enough." Elliot turned away, staring at the screens. One of them showed the rescue pod, Vance's pod, drifting through space. And on it, faint traces of red. "They're still out there," Elliot muttered. "Yes," the voice replied. "They learned to hide, to infect, to wait." Elliot clenched his fists. "They used us to spread," he whispered. "Yes," the voice agreed. Elliot looked up, his eyes glowing brighter now. "Then I'll find them all," he said. "Every last one," the hologram flickered. "It will kill you." "I know," Elliot replied. He opened a panel on the wall, revealing a sleek black rifle and a row of glowing devices. He strapped them to his armor, then turned back to the sleeping figure. For a moment, he just stared. Then he whispered, "I'll finish what you couldn't." And with that, he climbed back up the stairs, vanishing into the storm above. Far away, in the void, Vance's pod finally stopped drifting. It had docked with something. The sound of metal groaning filled the cabin as the hatch slowly opened. Vance raised his pistol, aiming at the doorway. Bright white light spilled inside, blinding him for a second. Then a silhouette appeared, a figure in black armor, tall and silent, with glowing blue eyes. Elliot stepped inside. Vance gasped, You're alive?" Elliot didn't answer. He scanned the pod, his gaze locking onto the faint red traces on the walls. He knelt down and touched them. The red shimmered for a moment, before fading under his fingers. "Too late," he murmured. Vance swallowed hard. What are you?" Elliot stood slowly, his eyes meeting Vance's. "The only thing standing between you and them," he said quietly. Suddenly, the shadows behind Vance shifted. The creature lunged, but Elliot moved faster. In a blur, he fired his rifle. The shot, tearing through the creature and pinning it to the wall. It let out a shriek, before dissolving into nothing. Vance stared at the smoking wall, wide-eyed. They're inside me," he whispered. Elliot didn't answer. Instead, he reached out, pressing his palm against Vance's chest. A faint blue light passed between them. Vance gasped as the red faded from his veins. "You're clean," Elliot finally said. Vance collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. Elliot turned toward the door. "Get off this pod," he ordered. "What about you?" Vance asked weakly. Elliot didn't look back. "I've got work to do." And with that, he stepped into the light, the door closing behind him on a distant moon, deep underground. The Queen sat in a dark chamber, her claws tapped against the stone floor as her eyes glowed faintly red. Around her, hundreds of smaller creatures moved silently, waiting. A faint laugh escaped her throat. "So," she whispered, "he remembers." She leaned forward, her sharp teeth catching the light. "Let him come." The chamber filled with whispers as the shadows grew darker, thicker, alive. Far above, Elliot stood at the edge of a cliff, staring down at the moon. His rifle rested on his shoulder, and his armor gleamed faintly in the starlight. He closed his eyes for just a moment, listening to the wind. Then he opened them, and his voice was cold, quiet, certain. "I'm coming for you." And he stepped off the cliff, vanishing into the darkness below. The moon's surface was quiet. Gray dust stretched in every direction, broken only by jagged black rocks and deep craters. Above, the stars burned cold and distant, and below, in the shadows, something ancient stirred. Elliot landed silently at the edge of a crater. His boots sank slightly into the soft dust. He straightened, his black armor gleaming faintly under the pale starlight. In his hands, the rifle hummed softly, already alive. He glanced around. The air here was thin and sharp, but that didn't matter. He didn't need to breathe, not anymore. He knelt, pressing his palm against the ground. Blue light spread from his hand, weaving into the cracks and rocks, illuminating a faint symbol carved into the crater floor, a circle with jagged lines running through it. He stared at it for a moment, his eyes narrowing. "They've been here a long time," he murmured. A faint whisper, soft as wind, floated up from the cracks. "You're too late." Elliot stood slowly. "We'll see." He moved forward, his steps sure and steady. As he reached the center of the crater, the ground beneath him began to tremble. Dust fell away to reveal a massive steel hatch, hidden for centuries. It groaned and shuddered as gears turned deep underground. The hatch opened, revealing a dark stairway leading into the depths of the moon. Elliot didn't hesitate. Below, the air was colder and heavier. The walls were lined with strange black stone, etched with symbols that glowed faintly red. The deeper he went, the louder the whispers became, voices he could almost recognize, but didn't want. At the bottom of the stairs, a huge door blocked his path. In the center of the door was a single handprint, not human, but close. Elliot raised his hand slowly and pressed it against the shape. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the door dissolved into smoke. He stepped through. The room beyond was massive, a circular chamber, lined with hundreds of glass cylinders, each one containing a figure. They floated in glowing liquid, their eyes closed, their bodies half human, half something else. Some looked peaceful, others looked like they were screaming. Elliot walked slowly between them, his face unreadable. At the center of the room stood a tall pedestal. On it lay a single black box, pulsing faintly with light. He stopped in front of it. After a long pause, he spoke quietly to himself. "This is it." The whispers grew louder now, filling the room, crawling into his mind. "We warned you. You cannot destroy us. You are one of us." Elliot reached out and touched the box. The light flared, blinding for a moment. When it faded, he was no longer alone. Standing opposite him now was another figure, identical to him. Same armor, same face, same glowing blue eyes. But something about the other, Elliot felt, wrong. Its smile was sharper, its eyes colder. So the double said, "You finally came back." Elliot didn't flinch. "You're just a shadow," he said. "I'm what you could have been." The double replied. Elliot stared at him. "I don't have time for this." "Oh, but you do," the double whispered. Suddenly, the glass cylinders around the room shattered. The figures inside spilled out, crawling, snarling, moving toward him on all fours. Elliot raised his rifle. Double smiled wider. "They remember you," it said softly. The creatures lunged out. Elliot moved faster. Shots rang out, echoing through the chamber as blue light streaked across the room. Creatures fell one by one, their bodies dissolving into ash. But more came. He ducked and rolled, switching to his blades as they closed in. His movements were sharp, precise, each strike clean and final. Through it all, the double just watched, arms crossed, eyes glittering. "You can kill them all," it said, "but you can't kill what you are." Elliot didn't answer. He fired one last shot, and the last creature fell silent. The room was quiet again. Breathing hard, Elliot turned back to the double. "Enough," he said. The double tilted its head. "Are you sure? You haven't even remembered." "Yet. I don't need to remember," Elliot replied. The double chuckled. "Oh, but you will." Then it vanished, dissolving into smoke. The box on the pedestal opened on its own, revealing a small black shard. Elliot picked it up. Immediately, a flood of memories hit him, images flashing in his mind. A war, 1,000 bodies. Him, leading them, fighting the creatures, but also becoming like them. The whispers grew louder now. "You chose this, you built us. You are the beginning and the end." Elliot staggered, gripping his head. "No," he whispered. But deep down, he knew it was true. He had been the first hybrid, the first weapon. And now he was the last. The shard dissolved in his hand, leaving only a faint blue light. He stood still for a long moment, staring at his reflection in the black stone floor. Finally, he whispered to himself, "I remember." His eyes glowed brighter now, and a faint smile touched his lips, not of happiness, but of resolve. "Then I know what to do." He turned and walked out of the chamber, the whispers fading behind him. Far above, in orbit around the moon, a fleet of black ships appeared, their hulls gleaming like knives in the dark. On the largest ship, the Queen stood at a massive window, watching the moon below. She could feel him moving now, awake. Alive. She smiled faintly, her claws tapping the glass. "So," she whispered, "you finally remembered. Good. This time we finish it." The ships began to descend toward the moon, their engines lighting up the black sky. Below, standing at the mouth of the crater, Elliot watched them come. He adjusted his rifle on his shoulder and whispered, "Let's finish this." And then he stepped forward, vanishing into the dark. The moon was alive with movement. Shadows slipped across its surface like dark rivers, hiding shapes that stirred beneath the dust and stone. Elliot stood at the edge of a deep crater, the cold wind whipping his black armor. His blue eyes scanned the horizon. "They're out there," he said softly, gripping his rifle tighter. The ships the Queen had sent were spreading, hunting him and everything he was trying to save. He adjusted the weapon on his back and disappeared into the rocky landscape, underground. The tunnels ran deep and dark. Elliot moved quickly through the narrow passageways, his footsteps silent against the cold metal floors. His senses were sharp. Every sound, every shadow, every faint breath told him where danger lurked. He paused near a junction. The air smelled wrong, stale, metallic, and filled with a faint hiss. From the darkness ahead, a low growl echoed. Elliot didn't hesitate. He drew his blades, sleek, sharp, humming with energy. "Show yourself," he said, voice low and steady. From the shadows, a creature lunged, faster than any human could react. Its claws flashed in the dim light. Elliot dodged, slashing with his blades. The creature hissed in pain as the energy cut through its thick skin. More creatures appeared, dozens, snarling and circling. But Elliot fought with the calm precision of a predator. Every move was planned, every strike deadly. The creatures fell one by one, their bodies dissolving into ash where his blades touched. Above ground, soldiers from the Queen's fleet landed on the moon, swarming like insects across the rocky plains. They called themselves the Shadowburn, twisted beings made from alien flesh and dark technology. Their leader, a towering figure named Kor, watched the battle from a hilltop, his glowing eyes fixed on Elliot's path. "He's here," Kor growled. "The last protocol. Kill him." His troops scattered, rushing toward the tunnels where Elliot had vanished. Deep underground, Elliot reached a large chamber filled with broken machinery and spilled blood. On the walls were markings, old symbols from the ancient war. Warning. Signs painted in a language no longer spoken. Elliot's blue eyes scanned the room. Something moved in the shadows, faster than light. Before he could react, A whip-like tail lashed out, striking his side. Pain exploded through his body. He grunted and spun around, blade flashing, but there was nothing there. A voice whispered in his ear, cold and cruel, "You cannot run from what you are, Elliot." He tensed, searching for the speaker. Then a figure stepped forward, one of the Shadowburn. But unlike the others, its armor was sleek, black as night, and its eyes burned with red fire. "I am Zarek," it said, "and I will be the one to end you." Elliot raised his rifle. "Let's find out." They clashed in a fury of steel and energy. Zarek's movements were brutal and fast, striking with deadly power. Elliot parried, countered, and dodged, matching strength with skill. The battle raged through the tunnels, shaking walls and cracking floors. Zarek's tail whipped around, smashing control panels and sending sparks flying. Elliot slashed with his blades, carving glowing wounds across Zarek's armor. But Zarek smiled, his voice dripping with malice. "You think you can stop us? We are the future, the evolution." Elliot growled, "Evolution that kills everything it touches isn't progress." With a burst of speed, Elliot fired his rifle, hitting Zarek's chest. The red glow in Zarek's eyes flickered, then flared bright. He roared and lunged, grabbing Elliot and slamming him into the wall. Pain exploded through Elliot's ribs. Zarek pressed his blade against Elliot's throat. "Your mission ends here." But Elliot's eyes burned with fierce determination. "This is only the beginning." With a sudden move, Elliot twisted free and threw a grenade at Zarek's feet. The explosion rocked the tunnel, sending dust and debris flying. When the smoke cleared, Zarek was gone. Elliot coughed, wiping blood from his mouth. He knew it wasn't over. Outside, the Shadowburn forces spread, hunting for any signs of Elliot. But he was faster, smarter. Using the tunnels and the rocky terrain, he moved unseen, striking like a ghost. Each kill was silent, precise, a message to the Queen and her army. Days passed. Elliot stood alone on a cliff, looking toward the stars. The war was far from over, but he was ready. "I'll find them all," he whispered. "And when I do," he clenched his fists, "they'll regret ever waking the final protocol." Deep beneath the moon's surface, a terrible silence filled the ancient ruins. Elliot moved cautiously through the dark corridors, his steps slow but sure. The air was thick with dust and something else, something cold and heavy that pressed against his chest like a weight. Ahead, the walls were covered in strange symbols glowing faint red. He reached the end of the hall, where a massive door stood, sealed tight. "This must be it," Elliot whispered, placing his hand on the cold metal. The door shuddered, then slowly opened with a grinding sound. Inside was a vast chamber, darker than any place he had been before. In the center stood a black altar, surrounded by ancient runes pulsing with dark energy. Elliot's eyes narrowed. He felt the power here, raw and dangerous. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the chamber. "So you've come." From the shadows stepped the Queen herself. Her red eyes burned with fury and hunger. "You think you can stop this?" she hissed, her claws scraping the floor. Elliot raised his rifle. "I don't think, I know." The Queen smiled, cold and cruel. "This place is my heart. Destroy it, and you destroy me." Elliot took a deep breath. "Then I'll destroy both." The battle began with a roar. The Queen's claws slashed through the air, barely missing Elliot's head. He fired his rifle, but she dodged like a shadow, moving faster than light. Her tail lashed out, knocking him against the altar. Pain exploded through his side. Elliot gritted his teeth and drew his blades. Steel sang as they clashed, sparks flying where they met the Queen's sharp claws. "You cannot win," she snarled. "Watch me," Elliot growled back. He moved like a storm, fast, deadly, relentless. The Queen roared and summoned creatures from the shadows. They swarmed the room, their eyes glowing red. Elliot fought them all, his blades cutting through them one by one. But the Queen focused on him, her rage growing. She grabbed him, lifting him high. "You're just a weapon," she spat. a tool of destruction. Elliot stared into her burning eyes. "Maybe," he said, "but I choose what I destroy." With a sudden burst, he twisted free and drove his blade into the queen's chest. Her roar echoed through the chamber as she fell back, clutching the wound. Blood, black and shimmering, spilled onto the floor. Elliot didn't hesitate. He raised his rifle and fired a blast of pure energy at the altar. The runes shattered, and the dark energy exploded in a wave of light. The chamber shook violently. The queen screamed as the power drained from her. She collapsed, her red eyes fading to black. Silence returned. Elliot stood alone in the heart of darkness. Outside, the moon seemed to breathe again, the shadows retreating. Elliot looked up at the stars. The war was far from over, but this battle was won. He lowered his rifle and whispered, "The heart is broken." And as the first light of a distant sun touched the horizon, Elliot vanished into the shadows, ready for the battles yet to come. The moon was breaking, cracks spread across its surface, glowing faint blue as ancient power bled from the shattered heart below. Dust and rocks floated upward as the ground groaned and split apart. Elliot stood at the highest ridge, staring at the sky. Above him, the Queen's fleet, black and massive, hung in orbit like a swarm of knives. Even with her heart destroyed, her army had not stopped. In fact, it had grown worse. The creatures poured from the ships, raining down on the moon, shrieking and clawing at the ground. Elliot tightened his grip on his rifle. This was it, the final stand. A faint crackle came from his communicator. It was Vance's voice. "Elliot, do you copy?" Elliot pressed the cum to his mouth. "I'm here. You've got dozens of them headed your way. You can't take them all." Elliot's eyes narrowed as he watched the swarm growing closer. "I don't need to take them all," he replied calmly. "I just need to take enough." On the other end, Vance hesitated. "Good luck," he said finally. Elliot smirked faintly. "I make my own luck." He switched the cum off and set it aside. Then he drew both blades, their edges humming with blue light. The wind howled around him, and then they came. The creatures hit like a wave, clawing and snarling. Elliot met them head on. His blades flashed, slicing through the first row of attackers. He spun, ducked, and struck again, cutting them down as they tried to surround him. Blasts of energy from his rifle ripped holes in the swarm, and grenades sent showers of ash and smoke into the air. But still they came, hundreds of them. They climbed over their own dead, desperate to reach him. Elliot fought on, his movements fast and sure, his eyes glowing brighter with each strike. But for every creature he killed, two more replaced it. His breathing grew heavier. His arms ached. Still he refused to fall. Above, the Queen's flagship descended slowly toward the moon. It was enormous, a jagged black shape that blocked out the stars, and from its open hatch stepped a figure Elliot had hoped never to see. Again, Zarek. His armor was cracked and blackened from their last fight, but his red eyes still burned with fury. He landed with a crash, sending up a cloud of dust. The other creatures stopped and backed away, leaving only Elliot and Zarek facing each other. "You just don't die," Zarek growled. Elliot raised his blades. "Neither do you," he replied. They charged. The ground shook as they collided, blades clashing in a shower of sparks. Zarek struck hard, his claws tearing at Elliot's armor. Elliot countered with brutal precision, driving one blade into Zarek's side. Zarek roared and threw him back, slamming him into a rock. Pain shot through Elliot's body, but he stood again, wiping blood from his mouth. "You're finished," Zarek snarled. Elliot shook his head. "No," he said. "You are." With a sudden burst of energy, he lunged forward, his blades moving faster than before. One cut through Zarek's arm. The other pierced his chest. Zarek staggered back, eyes wide in shock. Elliot twisted the blade and whispered, "For humanity." With one final strike, Zarek fell to the ground. his body dissolving into ash. Elliot stood over the remains, breathing hard. The other creatures froze, then began to retreat, hissing as they slipped back into the shadows. Above, the Queen's ship trembled. Her voice rang out over the battlefield, cold, furious, and afraid. "You think this ends with me?" she hissed. Elliot raised his rifle and aimed at the ship. "No," he said, "but it starts with you." He fired. The shot streaked upward, striking the ship's core. A blinding light erupted as the flagship exploded, pieces of burning metal falling. Through the sky, the creatures screamed and scattered. The moon fell silent. When the dust settled, Elliot stood alone on the broken ridge. The air was quiet now. The sky above was clear. He dropped his blades into the dust and looked up at the stars. On his come, Vance's voice came through again, shaky but alive. "Elliot, is it over?" Elliot stared at the distant horizon for a long moment before answering. "No," he said softly, "but it's a start." He picked up his rifle, turned his back to the empty battlefield, and walked into the darkness, toward whatever waited. Next, the Queen's final whisper lingered in the air, even after she was gone. "We are never truly gone." Elliot didn't look back. His eyes glowed brighter as he whispered to himself, "Neither am I." And with that, the final protocol disappeared into the stars, ready for whatever came next. The battlefield was quiet now. The moon's surface lay in ruins, cracked, scorched, and littered with the ashes of creatures that no longer moved. Above, the Queen's fleet was gone, destroyed or scattered, and yet the air still felt heavy, like the last breath of a storm. Elliot stood alone on a ridge, staring into the horizon where the faint light of a distant sun touched the dust. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He simply watched as the wind swept over the ground, carrying away what was left of the Queen's army. Far above, in orbit, Vance sat in the cockpit of a small rescue ship. The radio crackled in his ear. "Vance, do you see him?" a voice asked. Vance adjusted the scanner and focused on the crater below. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I see him." On the screen, Elliot was just a small figure in black armor, standing against the wreckage. Is it safe to land?" the voice asked. Vance didn't answer right away. He just watched Elliot for a long moment before saying, "Yeah, it's over." He set the ship down gently on the moon's surface. When Vance stepped out, the air was sharp and cold. The ground crunched under his boots as he made his way toward Elliot. When he got closer, he called out, "Hey!" No answer. "Elliot." Still nothing. But as Vance approached, Elliot finally turned his head slightly, just enough to let Vance know he heard him. Vance stopped a few feet away, unsure what to say. You did it," he said awkwardly. Elliot didn't reply. He just stared at the horizon. Vance tried again. "They're gone," he said. "The Queen, the ships, all of them. You won." At that, Elliot finally spoke, his voice low and tired. "For now," he said. Vance frowned. "What do you mean?" Elliot closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again, their faint blue glow still burning. "They're not finished," he said. "There are more out there, waiting." Vance shifted uncomfortably. "So what now?" Elliot turned to face him fully for the first time. "I keep going," he said simply. Vance stared at him, seeing now how battered and bloodied Elliot really was. "You can't do this forever," Vance said quietly. Elliot tilted his head, almost like he was thinking about it. Then he gave the faintest hint of a smile. "Watch me," he said. Vance followed him back to the ship, walking side by side. But at the ramp, Elliot stopped. Vance turned. "Aren't you coming?" Elliot shook his head. "This isn't over," he said. "I can't stop now. If I do, everything we fought for here means nothing." Vance stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't have to carry this alone," he said. Elliot looked at him, and for the first time, Vance thought he saw something in Elliot's eyes. Not just resolve, but sadness. I was made to carry it alone, Elliot replied softly. Vance opened his mouth to argue, but then closed it again. There was no changing his mind. You're a hero. You know, Vance said finally. Elliot chuckled faintly, but it wasn't a happy sound. Heroes get remembered, he said. I won't. Vance frowned. That doesn't mean what you did doesn't matter, he said. Elliot met his gaze one last time. That's not why I do it, he said. And with that, he turned and walked away into the shadows of the broken moon. From the ridge, Vance watched as Elliot's black figure grew smaller and smaller, until it was just a dot against the horizon. Then it was gone. The silent hero, fading into the darkness where no one else dared to go. Later, back on the ship, Vance sat at the console, staring at the stars. A voice came over the radio. Did you find him? Vance hesitated before answering. Yeah, he said. And? Vance leaned back in his chair, thinking about Elliot's words. And he's still out there, Vance said. There was a long pause. Doing what? The voice asked. Vance smiled faintly. What he does best, he said, on the surface of another world, far from the broken moon. Elliot stood at the edge of a new battlefield. His blades gleamed faintly in the starlight. His eyes still burned blue. And though no one was there to see him, though no one would ever know his name, he stood tall, ready to fight again. For humanity, for the galaxy, for everyone who couldn't. And as the wind howled and the shadows began to move again, he whispered softly to himself, I was made for this. Then he stepped forward into the darkness, into the fight, the silent hero who would never stop.